Hello, my name is Aquiles and I have been studying democracy and capitalism in the next century for hours and I don't understand. I think I won't pass the exam.
You don't have to worry about anything for your exam, Aquiles. In this video, we will teach you everything about capitalist and democracy system in the 19th century, and you will have a very good grade.
Democracy is a form of government in which citizens have the right to choose their representatives through vote. The active participation of the community as a whole in the political life is a key for democracy, as well as the protection of human rights and a rule of law which applies to every member of the community as a form of regulation. Some of the major causes that led Europe seek for democracy were the end of the Dark Christian Ages, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, and the Scientific Revolution, as well as the ideals of thinkers like John Locke, Voltaire, Montesquieu, and Rousseau. Universal male suffrage, ministerial responsibility, and mass political parties. Some of the consequences were demands for rights, discomfort or lack of representation, inequality in the distribution of wealth, and diminishment of trust on governments. The concept of democracy was born in ancient Greece, and as we can see throughout history, it is the most convenient form to rule over small areas, just like Switzerland.
So today we're going to talk about capitalism. Capitalism is an economic system in which the government has no power when it comes to trading or producing stuff. So people develop a sense of freedom. So people kind of compete with great economies. This economic system can be seen in places like United States, Europe, in places like Germany or Great Britain, and in Australia. The causes of the capitalism come from the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, and the Renaissance. As a consequence of the capitalism, we have today the division of labor and the laboral reforms. The major thinker of capitalism was Adam Smith with his book, The Wealth of Nations.
In North America, we can see the Mexico War of Independence. The Enlightenment ideas in encyclopedias and economies started to spread all over the world. The first physiocrats talk about new political systems with the sovereignty of the town, freedom, and equality. They didn't accept anymore the divine right of their kings and wanted the division of powers. The French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars also constitute some of the other causes of this movement. There was a big social inequality on the New Spain. The Creoles wanted to equal themselves to the Spaniards. The mestizos weren't taken into account, and the indigenous people also wanted to be taken account. The Creoles started and headed the war. The first stage of this war is called initiation. This is characterized because of the improvisation and disorganization of the movement and starts when Miguel Hidalgo gives a cry for independence the 15th of September of 1810. However, he was fusiled in 1811 and José María Morelos, another important leader, headed the war. The second stage is called organization because it defines the objective of the war and started to get more structure. During this period, Morelos wrote Los Sentimientos de la Nación, in which for first time the ideas of the War of Independence are expressed. This phase ends with the death of Morelos in 1815. The third stage is called resistance and is characterized for a big disorder. With the death of Morelos, a great void is created, but with the time, people regained the offensive with the help of Vicente Guerrero and won the war. Javier Mina, a Spanish liberal who fought and died for the cause, also exils in this period. And the last stage is called consummation and it starts in February 1821 with the signing of the Plan de Iguala by Agustín de Iturbide, in which Mexico independence is recognized. There was no money to reactivate Mexico's economy, so Mexico started its independence in bankruptcy. The productive activities were paralyzed throughout the country, and the lack of communication channels and media difficulted the organization of the country. Also, the government wasn't well defined. Some wanted a president and a republic, and others wanted the government to continue the same as in the New Spain. They wanted a monarchy and an emperor.
Latin American independences took place in the 19th century. Almost all of the territory of Latin America was governed by Spanish, with the exception of Brazil, which was governed by the Portuguese. Latin America independences were mostly intellectual, since we had to change people's way of thinking from a monarchy to a republic. All the movements started almost at the same time, with Bolivia in May the 25th, 1809, Ecuador in August 10th, 1809, Venezuela in April the 19th, 1810, Argentina in May 25th, 1810, and Chile in September 18th, 1810. The independences started because there was a desire to separate from the crown, but to maintain the country's culture. Some major causes for the independences were the nationalism from each country recognizing their people, the invasion of Napoleon to Spain in 1808, and that all the countries wanted a republic and to have governors from their own country. The first country to recognize the independences was Great Britain, which gave money to the new countries for exchange of Great Britain to exploit the resources of each country. Some major concepts for the Latin American independences were the formation of new states or countries as we know them today, the Creoles of all the countries having the power of the countries, and the declaration of republics in the majority of the countries of Latin America.
Now we will have an overview of the European countries.
Britain had been a two-party parliamentary system. Conservatives and liberals competed for popular support and gave, through reforms, women over 30 years old and men over 21 the right to vote. The Liberals and the Labour Party collaborated to defend workers' rights. Some of the documents they enacted were the National Insurance Act of 1911. In France, the Constitution of the Third Republic established a two-house parliamentary system, a president and a prime minister. The Senate, or the upper house, in which representatives served for over 9 years and were often corrupt. They had more influence in France than the Chamber of Deputies, or lower house, in which members were elected through universal male suffrage. Some of the problems of democracy in France were that people's interests were not represented fairly. Only benefited minorities had a voice. Also, as there were too many political parties, the changes of loyalties and coalitions led to instability of the country. In this atmosphere, capitalism was not allowed to grow. Corrupt officials disrupted the liberties with taxation and regulations. In theory, Italy had a democratic form of government, but in practice, people's interests were not represented fairly in the parliament. Also, capitalism only existed in the north, which was industrialized, and the south was broke. In 1867, Austro-Hungary was created. It had a parliamentary system and was supposed to be democratic, but Francis Joseph suppressed any form of democracy. He only served his own interests. In Hungary, the parliament was owned by landowners who dominated peasants and ethnic groups, while in Austria, ethnic groups such as Germans, Czechs, Slavs, and Poles struggled for their freedom, but they were suppressed.
From September 1814 to June 1815, Clement von Metternich held the Congress of Vienna, in which practical considerations of power were discussed. Territories were readdressed in order to keep a country from dominating Europe. Most of the members were conservatists. This means they believed in obedience to political authority and religion. They also had the principle of intervention, which meant great powers had the right to send armies into countries in order to restore legitimate monarchs to their thrones.
Where are the conference?
An example of imperialism and capitalism happened in Africa during 1884 to 1885. Congo Conference, this was made to trade to Africa during the new imperial period, and it coincided with German sudden emerge as an imperial power, called by Portugal and organized by Otto von Bismarck, first Chancellor of Germany. So, why is Berlin Conference entering the category of democracy that happened in Africa in the 19th century? Because, well, it happened in Africa, that's the main important thing, and they they were they organized itself. That's one of the main important things of democracy. The organization. They don't just make it unequal. They divided all the territories equally, so there won't be any trouble. Yeah, that's it. And what about capitalism? Uh, the the economy of Africa was really low. This made that made easier for the European countries to colonize Africa. With each country of Europe having their own country in Africa, they can kind of share the economy, so that could rise the economy of some countries of Africa. But if we join all those countries, we can rise the economy. Until they leave their country, Africa went to Africa, no, France went to France, Spain to Spain, Portugal to Portugal. So that made again to load the economy of Africa because they didn't have the currency help of the country in Europe. Ottoman Empire, 1299 to 1923. Empire founded by Özgür Turkus under Osman I in northwest Anatolia. The Ottoman ended by the Byzantine Empire with the 1453 conquest of Constantinople by Mehmed the Conqueror. I think it's Conqueror. Yeah. Okay. By 60 to 17th century, it became a multinational and multilingual empire, controlling most of the Southeast Europe, West Asia, the Caucasus, North Africa, and the Horn of Africa.
In 1857, a growing Indian distrust of the British led to a revolt. The British call it the Great Rebellion, while the Indians call it the First War of Independence. Even though Indians fought bravely, they didn't succeed because they weren't well organized. The British brought order and stability to India, but they also hurt the economy and degraded the Indian people. British manufactured goods destroyed local industries. The introduction of British textiles put thousands of women out of work and severely damaged the Indian textile industry. In rural areas, the British sent zamindars or local officials to collect taxes. The British also encouraged many farmers to switch from growing food to growing cotton. Between the 18,000s and 19,000s, 30 million Indians died of starvation. The British presence in India led Indians to organize an independence movement. The first Indian nationalists were upper class and English educated. Many of them were from urban areas such as Mumbai, Chennai, and Calcutta. Some were trained in British law and were members of the civil service. In 1885, a small group of Indians formed the Indian National Congress (INC) in Mumbai. The INC called for a share in the governing process. Its principal goal was to seek independence for all Indians, regardless of class or religious background. In 1915, the return of a young Hindu from South Africa, Mohandas Gandhi, brought new life to India's struggle for independence. On his return home to India, Gandhi became active in the independence movement. Using his experience in South Africa, he set up a movement based on non-violent resistance.
Democracy and capitalism are factors that have been present all around the world, which makes the events of the 6 regions we have studied all similar, because people want it all the same, and for example, they have created like independences or reforms and revolts that are all around the world. So, like for example, in Africa and Latin America, they all wanted independence.
Thank you. I passed my exam and now I can rest playing video games.